Well, hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Pelt Music Podcast. Shortly, we'll be chatting with The View ahead of their new album, Exorcism of Youth, which is out on August 18th. But before then, the usual reminders from myself. If you would, please do follow Pelt on social media. You can find us on Facebook at Pelt and on Twitter and Instagram at Pelt Music. And again, if you would, please do hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, wherever you're watching or listening. Welcome, Kieren from The View, to the Pelt Music Podcast. Can't wait to get talking to you about, obviously, everything exciting going on with the band. But obviously, first of all, how are you today?
I'm good, thanks. Yeah.
Yeah. Obviously,
Yeah.
you must be excited. There's a lot of exciting stuff coming up for the band over the next month or so, but we'll dive just back over the last month or so first. Obviously, you've been hitting up a few of the festivals in this Great British Festival season, Neighbourhood, Transmit, Greenwich Summer Sounds as well. How has your summer been so far?
It's been really good. It's been a good summer. Like you said, they were all highlights there that you mentioned. Say especially Transmit, with it being so close, it's just down the road from here, and that sort of like local festival. So, but I so far so good. Still got a couple left festival wise before the tours. So, yeah, also look forward to. I enjoy festival like so.
Yeah, and the crowd reaction, obviously, because you had a mini hiatus. It was only a few years, and the pandemic happened during that, so it probably didn't feel as long as it actually was. But obviously, the reception to the band coming back. I mean, obviously, the initial shows you put on sale, you were blown away really with the amount of tickets that you sold, and looking at the crowd for Transmit, obviously, because listeners could catch it on the BBC. That massive crowd that you attracted there. How have you been really surprised by the obviously warm response to the band coming back?
Yeah, I've been genuinely surprised, to be honest. Like them gigs you mentioned, the Glasgow Academy shows, they were great. Like they were probably like up there with the best shows that we'd ever done, and like the crowds were amazing. And yeah, and I thought we'd maybe do 2 or 3 at a push, but when we done 4, I was like, oh, it's pretty cool. And yeah, the crowd at Transmit was great.
Yeah, no, it definitely looked it. And I think there is a sort of burgeoning scene again for indie music. I mean, we've had some great young bands on recently, like the K's, and fans seem to be really getting back into that genre of music again. It obviously took a bit of a dip for a while, and it didn't get the spotlight it deserved. So, I mean, it's a good time to come back, and obviously a great time to be getting a new album from The View. So, obviously, Exorcism of Youth is your 6th album, comes out on August the 18th. And first album in 8 years. What is the story of the album, and at what point did you decide that you were going to reconvene and do that work? Because it is a big undertaking.
I recorded it last year. I think it was around March, April time, I think, in Spain. And I think it was maybe about a year or so before that we sort of decided we were going to do it, and then we sort of had to get everything going in that sort of from sort of scratch. It was sort of people still doing stuff here and there and all that kind of stuff. So it took a while to sort of get the ship going again. But then, yeah, and then we recorded it last March, and yeah, and then we've been sitting on it for a long time. So it's always like that bit in the middle before it gets released, like sort of like the Netherlands is like, so it's like a year or something. So it's a bit weird, but glad it's finally coming out. It's been put back a few times, but.
Yeah. I've spoken to a number of artists on this podcast that have said that gap between recording and putting out can be so frustrating, because artistically and creatively you've probably moved on a bit in that time, and already you're maybe looking at the future, and now you've got to obviously put out and sing the praises of obviously this work you did 18 months ago now. Is that something you obviously do feel as well?
Yeah, that's just part of it. So there's nothing you could really do. It just takes that. So, yeah.
And obviously, it's first one in 8 years, as we say. How did you find the whole process of getting back together again and going through that? Was it like riding a bike? How did it go for you?
Yeah, it was good. Yeah, we just got back into it. We'd all been recording with different people and stuff anyway. So, yeah, it was a bit weird to start with, like, the first sort of pre-production things and that. We didn't really know how it was going to go, but we sort of got back to usual pretty quickly. Yeah.
Yeah, no, and it's fantastic to have you back. And obviously, I have had a sneak sort of listen of the album before, obviously release, and fans of the band are going to love the album definitely. So definitely encourage listeners listening to the podcast to. I know streaming's the done thing these days, but there are some great bundles, and there'll be links in the episode bio of this. So obviously, listeners, if you can, and I would encourage you to head along to the band's website, pick up an album physical copy, and obviously savor it, because it is a really good album. And the first taste of that album that came out was Feels Like, which was the sort of first pre-release single. And I always think that first single of any album, regardless of the length of time between albums, is always a bit of a statement. And given the gap between albums, it was always going to be an important single, the first one. So what made you as a band choose Feels Like? What stood out about that song that gave it that impetus to be that song?
I'm not too sure, to be honest. It was a sort of decision that came on, like, sort of record company, management, band, everybody was involved, sort of putting in votes and stuff. I wanted to go with Exorcism of Youth.
Yeah.
Single. It's like you say, I thought that would have been quite a sort of bold comeback, but in the end we ended up going for Feels Like, and yeah, it's a good tune. So yeah, I'm looking forward to playing it on the tours and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, no, definitely. And there's been, I believe, 4 sort of pre-release singles, all of which is sort of stood on their own feet, which I think is always a good thing. And the latest one we're going to touch on is obviously Woman of the Year that's just come out, because I love the sort of themes behind the song. And what can you tell the listeners about that song, and obviously how it came together for you, and what those themes are?
Well, that was one of Kyle's songs. I think it's sort of quite personal to him, so like, I'm not really qualified to be explaining in too much detail. Like, yeah, you'd have to ask Kyle about that one. But yeah.
Yeah, no, definitely. Obviously, it's putting a spotlight, isn't it, on the women in our life, and obviously that's always a positive thing in my point of view, because they are the unsung heroes. So, yeah, definitely a track worth listeners checking out. And I'm a bit old school as well. I love a good music video. I grew up watching music videos in my youth, just religiously in front of the TV, in front of MTV and all that kind of stuff. And it's really a lost art these days, because, it is, music TV isn't what it was. Listeners these days, you're going to end up looking at YouTube for something like that, and it's obviously on demand, and a lot less effort goes into them. But I was really impressed with the video that came along with the single Women of the Year. I think it fits the song really well, and it's just a really good old school kind of music video. How did that come into reality for you? How did you conceptualize it and put it in place?
Yeah, well, the video was done by my friend Scott Davison. He came up with the concept and all that. It's quite sort of, he's good at stuff like that. Does sort of quite sort of gritty, narrative driven videos is kind of like what he likes doing. And yeah, Scott basically came up with the whole thing and casted it and whatnot. But it's a cool video, I like it.
Yeah.
He's talented in what he does, making videos.
Definitely. It does come across really well. And again, the link will be in the bio, so I do encourage listeners to check that video out. And it complete lost art form, and it does take a real skill to obviously to make something like that. So kudos to Scott for that, for sure.
Yeah, really good. I'd recommend using them.
Yeah, definitely. And obviously, there has been this stream of singles that have come out in preparation for the release of the album, and there's always the way these things work. That you build up the promotion and the machine behind it. And in the olden days, again, because I like to make myself sound and feel old by talking in that manner, but obviously reaction was something you had to almost wait for, but you had to obviously play shows and talk to fans at the shows, or you had to wait for the magazines to release their reviews. But these days, social media makes feedback to anything you put out instantaneous. So how much attention do you pay to that, and how have you found the reaction to the new material?
I don't pay as much attention as some people do to the reaction and stuff, but it's been positive, and I do pay attention. But yeah, it's kind of the reviews and stuff. I don't read them all, but I'll sometimes read one if somebody tells us to, kind of thing. But like, yeah, by the time it's done. It's like we're happy with it. It's like it's out there. Do you know what I mean? It's like I like seeing the reaction live, like with the
Yeah.
song, how the songs go down live. That's something that I don't know. I put quite on a high pedestal or something, like kind of thing. But yeah,
Yeah, it's visceral, isn't it? You can feel that reaction in person and see how it is going across when you've got
yeah,
that audience. Whereas online, it is difficult. And as you say, I agree completely. A lot of people do put too much emphasis into obviously the metrics that are coming online, be it comments, likes, streaming figures, whatever it is. I always say live is how you measure your success.
yeah, yeah. It's just always the way I've sort of done it. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's a fantastic attitude that I couldn't agree more with, really. And another way to connect with fans that is kind of it's been a thing for a number of years, but it does seem to be becoming more and more of the done thing these days. Obviously, in and around the release week is in stores, so obviously
Yeah,
signings and intimate performances, and you guys have got a load lined up. And again,
yeah,
listeners will be able to click through in the links in the bio to find those dates.
yeah.
How excited are you for those more intimate shows and getting that connection with the audience?
Yeah, they'll be good. I mean, those things are always fun. They're always like a bit, you never know what's going to happen. Like it's like always like they're normally quite sort of ramshackle acoustic shows in shops and stuff, so you never know quite what's going to kick off. But it's good. Yeah, so I'm looking forward to them. We've got around to them like in stores, and then we've also got around like out stores that we're doing sort of smaller but full band shows. Fat Sam's in and PJ's in Dunfermline and a few other. I think they're all in Scotland. So I'm looking forward to them. Just like small club shows, full band. I prefer the full band to the acoustic shows, but
Yeah,
we've both got their merits.
they have both got their merits. I mean, I love the uniqueness of the acoustic shows because you
Mm,
sometimes get to see a song presented in a different way to what you get with the full band,
mm,
and it makes it a bit more special. But so does the intimate shows when you've got a band playing a venue that's smaller than they would normally do. It always just has that special feel to it, doesn't it?
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, excellent. And for fans that want to catch you live, they can't come along to any of those shows. Luckily for them, you've got a full tour lined up for November and December. And the fact that it straddles 2 months is a good indicator already, because a lot of the time these days, bands will target your big cities and they'll ignore the rest of the country. But you are properly hitting up like the whole of the country, which I think is I give you a lot of credit for as a band for doing that. And again, the dates will be available in the bio. Listeners can go and find a date and hopefully pop along and see you. If they do, what should they expect from them shows? I mean, I would hope there's going to be some new material coming out at their shows as well.
yeah, yeah. There'll definitely be some new material. How much I don't know, but there'll definitely be some new material, and all the old usual like sort of ones I'd imagine, and then it's always the kind of always play the sort of the singles from throughout the years and the few new ones, and then there's the other stuff in between that kind of makes the set a bit like what we end up going for in the middle kind of thing. Yeah, but yeah, there'll definitely be new stuff. And
Yeah, well, a
it should be
lot.
good shows. Like, looking forward to getting back. We've done a bit here and there, but we've never been out on the road proper since after the hiatus. So it'll be cool.
Yeah, no, it will be. Like for you guys, hopefully be a really enjoyable experience, and definitely for the fans to be able to see a full show again from the band is definitely something to try and head along to if you can. I know, again, listeners, obviously, I always talk about the cost of living crisis and everything, but the best way to support bands these days is to pop along to a show. Obviously, buy physical copies of the albums, buy a T-shirt when you're at the shows. So definitely encourage listeners to do that. We have a section in our other podcast that we have, which is and it's called Setlist Science, and it's interesting. Obviously, coming back, will have a unique perspective because you've had this kind of gap. You have had a run of shows where you probably felt obligated, you needed to focus more on the older material, and now you've got this run of shows where you're going to feel slightly obligated to play some newer material. But the main question of that section is, how much attention do you pay to the structure of your set list, and have you got any rules that you tend to follow whilst building them?
Yeah, we've kind of stuck to a similar structure with the set list for quite long, maybe too long even. But Like, yeah, it's normally we normally like start with something like quite in your face and like fast paced, high energy. Normally, maybe something like coming down, Grace, wasted little DJs or something, and then we do a few of them numbers, and then we normally kind of cut it down a bit in the middle, and then like so it'll go down sort of in pace and stuff down to like sort of face for the radio would kind of be like a penultimate where it's down there, and then from there build it back up to the end. That's normally our sort of, it's kind of almost like a big long song if you look at it, like sort of like banging in on the outro and then you come down for the middle eight in the middle and then sort of the outro's like everything's going on full cylinders again. That's kind of how I see it, like one big sort of long song but made up of little songs.
And that's a really unique way of. I've not heard it described like that before. A lot of people refer to it as the energy curve, because you take and like the journey you take the audience on. But yeah,
well,
that does.
The energy starts sort of big energy, then down, give it a bit of break, and then even more energy at the end to finish off, kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think obviously it's kind of tried and tested at this point, and a lot of bands will follow that because it does work well for both the band and obviously the listeners to go on that journey and get a bit of a break, really. Especially again watching the Transmit show, obviously really lively crowd, and obviously you're a band that are able to generate that energy with an audience. I think it definitely helps to have the sort of change of pace in that, because if it's all out all the time, it's obviously difficult for the band energy wise as well to keep up with that, I guess.
Yeah, it's just good to have that contrast.
Yeah, definitely. I'm a massive setlist geek, so I pay a lot of attention to these sort of things, and always interests me to ask that. And we have added in a secondary question recently because there's been a massive online sort of debate that sprung out of a meme around peekaboo for adults. But the question is, encores. Are you a fan, or what are your thoughts on encores at the minute? Yes or no?
Particularly a fan of encores in general, but I can see why people do them sometimes. We've started doing them, but we've never done them for years. And I quite like that. But yeah, whatever. Like it's funny when bands sort of deal with it in a funny way, like Madness just turn around for a minute and just say we're just going to turn around and just turn back again instead of walking all the way down the stairs and back up again and stuff like that. It's great. I've seen a few people dealing with them in that kind of way, which is quite cool. But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
Depends on the show, I suppose.
Exactly. I mean, and that's what we always tend to arrive at when we talk about this with our guests is that when there's spontaneity and it's a natural occurring encore, like the fans are literally saying, no, we are not going, we want more, then it's magical. But yeah, it feels sometimes a bit pantomime, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think, yeah.
Yeah, no, excellent, and obviously, again, listeners, November, December, find a date near you and do try and come along to a show. I've caught the band previously, years ago, as it were. Again, to make myself feel old, as I always do. But yeah, definitely worth coming along and checking out the View. So obviously, the best way to stay up to date these days with everything, we touched on it a little while ago, social media. So I always give out the social handles, so listeners know where to go. And Instagram for you guys is official_the View. Facebook is just View, the word View. And Twitter, although I should get used to calling it X now by the sounds of things, is View Official. So again, encourage listeners to check them out. And obviously, View is probably a bit of one of them ones where it's quite hard. You didn't, obviously, when you named the band, you probably weren't thinking of getting social media handles, but it's always a laugh when we talk about this because, again, you're an example of where you've ended up with 3 different handles, and I imagine it's probably quite difficult because it's a generic type word, isn't it? View.
Yeah. Some people sometimes think we're like the TV show The View.
Yes.
Apparently, and like right in. But we were a bit late to the whole social media thing. Really, we had a MySpace right at the very start, which was quite useful in the beginning for like getting the word out there and stuff. I remember, but then we were quite. I think we had a Facebook, but I still don't have a Facebook. So, but I think we had a Facebook, but we never Twitter or Instagram. We were like well late to the party on them.
Yeah. I've never been a massive fan, and it always makes me laugh doing this little segment where we read them out. I think the band that probably screwed themselves the most. I don't know if you'd be familiar with a British band that had literally just called A. So, I mean, obviously they've been around for 25 plus years. They clearly, you know, I guess if they formed nowadays, you'd never ever be able to do something like that. But yeah, it is funny how the world changes. And speaking of the world changing, that brings us to the final segment that listeners will be used to now. We've had it probably for about 7 or 8 of these podcasts, and we call it Magic Wand. And obviously, in the conversations we've had over the last 30 plus episodes of the podcast, we always ended up talking about some issues that are in the industry. So that's why we brought this segment in. And obviously there's a lot that needs to change in the music industry realistically. But for today, we're going to change one thing. I'm going to give you a magic wand and you can change one thing, but one thing only in the music industry. So Kieren, what would you change if you had that wand?
They sound like a grumpy old man or whatever, but I'd probably change. I'd probably like get artists paid more for streaming, more fairer pay for their streaming.
Yeah, that is a big one. That is a big one. I mean, I don't think a lot of listeners that don't spend probably as much time online looking at this sort of thing as I do realize that how pitiful the likes of Spotify are at paying artists. And obviously, there's historical issues around the structure of record deals as well that obviously does not favor the musician and the people that have created this art. So I mean, I agree completely with that one. Yeah, definitely. That's a really, really good one. And obviously, again, for listeners to close us out, there's so much going on with The View right now. Exorcism of Youth is out on August 18th, and you should definitely pick up a copy of that. And then obviously the in-stores coming up around that release, and in November and December, the tour dates. It's been a pleasure obviously getting to chat to you about all of this, Kieren, and I know you will be really excited about what is coming up for the band. And we always just chuck the last bit to the guest and say, what would be your final message for the listeners today?
Just have a good day, enjoy yourself.
Be good to each other. Exactly. Yeah, just have a good day. That is what life should all be about. Definitely. No, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast, Kieren. Well, thank you everyone for listening. I really do hope you enjoyed that chat there with The View. Please do make sure you check out their new album, Exorcism of Youth, which is out on August the 18th. And of course, follow the band across social media to stay up to date with everything coming from them. You can also stay up to date with Full Pelt. We're on Facebook at Full Pelt and on Twitter and Instagram at Full Pelt Music. And finally, if you would, please do hit that like button, hit that subscribe button wherever you're watching or listening, because we'll be back very soon with another episode of the Full Pelt Music Podcast.